Awesome. Hello, solar members. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy. My name is John. This is Bella. Say hi, Bella.
Hi.
I realized on an earlier recording that, first of all, our view. Let's see if I can get the gallery view. I don't know if this goes.
And John, I would love to get the permission to record, because that's when I got your recording last week. It was you and me, and if I only do hi and I don't say anything, it still stays on you. But
I know.
When I record it, at least it has like both of us.
It has both. I see. Right on. So anyhow, welcome to Lunar Alchemy this week. This is a huge solar transit going on. If you were able to see one of our previous, our last week's video, we have now crossed over into the second half of the solar transits all the way around the entire astrological calendar. So what that means is that for the rest of the time in lunar alchemy until around February, mid-February-ish, we're going to be covering the programming partners of the solar transits, which we have already moved through. So if you've been able to watch some previous lunar alchemy discussions, this is where we're having a tantric explosion of energy happening between the sun and the earth. And I'm really excited about this particular gene key 59 because it is the programming partner of gene key 55, which those of you who follow human design will know is the catalyst for a massive genetic mutation that's going on at the individual level. So gene key 59 is a huge deal because when a particular mutation is occurring within the genes, the programming partner is going to be massively affected and will be rapidly transforming alongside of it. So that's what's going on right now. So I'm really excited to be talking about it for a number of other reasons, which I hope we'll get into. But today we're talking about the shadow of dishonesty and about why gene key 59 is also a catalyst for a massive transformation of humanity at the collective level rather than at the individual level, as is gene key 55. So thank you for joining us. I'm really excited about today and can't wait to dive in. So Bella, every week we come in and I ask you for an update of what's going on, and there's so many different layers to how we can interact with the energies that are present. What's your take on gene key 59 and what might be going on right now for us as a result of this particular transit?
Yeah, I would again show you the charts if you can.
Yeah, let's do that. There you go.
So you were speaking about 59 that is here in Virgo, and we see we have the sun, we have Mars, and we have Mercury all here in Virgo. And these are all what we call the closer planets. They have very much to do with where we're at. And then here on the other side, we have Neptune and Jupiter and Saturn. So there is something with me, myself, my little world, my close relationships, and then kind of the collective and society, where it's actually the closer planets are here, and then the further on planets are in the transpersonal, in the collective. So I believe that there is a question about that, me and we, and maybe some tension as well between it. And then I feel like in this, we also have the opposition in Libra of Venus and then Chiron. And here we also have kind of feminine, masculine energy. We have the self and we have the collective. So it's asking us to step up into our own authority instead of trying to control maybe the other. Or when you are in relationships where you feel you have to control the other, then actually they, it might not be the relationship that is right for you. Maybe with the moon where it is right now, it's even the time to take initiative and maybe let that die. It feels like relationships are going to be huge for the coming month. And I think we were speaking about this several Thursdays, Tuesdays when we met, about the codon rings and the quarter of duality, that is all about relationships. So that's where we're going for the next month. It's going to be important who you're with. It's going to be important if your values are aligned with that person. And like I said, you're not going to feel in sovereignty. You're not going to feel in core stability if what you feel like you need to do is to control others. Or on the other hand, when we look at 21 and 48, it's also not going to be a fruitful relationship if you feel like you have to behave a certain way, maybe because of their inadequacy, that you can't truly be you because maybe then you would shine too much and you would make them feel uncomfortable. So a lot of those different dynamics that are reasons for why you are not being you with your true colors in the world is what I feel is at play. And possibly a lot of healing right now as well with that. What's your true authority? Since we have your values and your way of living and your way of harmonizing or disharmonizing with the other. And well, let's use a few words about the 59 as well. We're still here in the fourth line, and this is the line of friendship. And it's about having true intimacy built on trust with the other. And the fourth line says, friendship first, sex after. So to really feel into that intimacy does not just have to do with physical intimacy or sex. The fourth line of the 59 knows that the only thing that's really worth it in relationship is intimacy. And that comes from that trust, that comes from that innocence. And the 59 and the 55 together, and this brings us back to what you were mentioning, John. It brings us back to last week and the conversation we had about the tantric energies, because here we would say that the 59 is the seed and the 55 is the egg, and we are seeding something new in humanity right now. That is a new way of relating, and it's a way that it's allowing spirit to move. So kind of that evolution, move through us and move up in our awareness, and then we also have the involution where we're becoming more embodied. And that's, for me, it's what Virgo is about, is that priestess, that working deep in the body, or understanding the magic deep in the body. And then we can fly out and be with Pisces and be poetic and be beyond what's human. But it's so important. That's Virgo for me. It's that the virgin, but not the virgin because she doesn't have sexual activity. The virgin because she's independent, sovereign in her body, and she can go in and out of interactions without losing herself. So yeah, coming back to that tantric theme that we were in already last week.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up a couple of things that are specifically related to this shadow that is available for alchemizing into a new stage of awareness. And of course, this has to do with relationships. And the 59, if you've been following along where the sun has been as it moved into the 7, the 4, the 29 last week, and now we're in the 59, this is the codon ring of union. And the 59 is really the key to unlocking the entire genetic codon ring, meaning you may be able to develop yourself into out of division into guidance. You may be able to develop yourself through a practice of forgiving self and others. You may be able to move beyond experiences of half-heartedness through an authentic inner commitment. But this entire codon ring and genetic transformation is never going to be fully unlocked until we deal with the shadow of dishonesty. And so one of the things that when we look at these shadows and gifts and cities, and especially the titles of them, oftentimes we can say, oh, dishonesty. Well, that's an easy one. You just have to tell the truth. You just have to be honest. And actually, when we go into a deeper contemplation and understanding of what is happening underneath these expressions of these energetic reflections from the cosmos, is that honesty is not the antidote to dishonesty. The transformation that occurs when dishonesty is released, or is its gift is unlocked, it creates intimacy. And that's not because you just went out and told the truth. When we see truth and dishonesty as opposing forces, then we're actually relating to this entire particular gene key, as well as this entire codon ring, from a perspective that is only informed through traumatic experience, and particularly genetic trauma. Not necessarily trauma that we've experienced. However, many of us, if we've had trauma in our lives, we may be able to, at some point in our lives, draw a connection between genetic trauma and the experiences that we have had in our lives as a reverberation of that genetic lineage that we have. So when we're looking at this idea of absolute transformation in our experience, when we're talking about Tantra, that's what we're really looking at, is this complete transformation of self and other into a total union of oneness that is actually a third being of its own creation. So that's why in this gene key, Richard Rudd is talking about how two human beings with auras can come together, and within the gift of intimacy, they generate a third aura. That's actually the result of a true tantric connection, which is the transmutation of opposites into the next stage of consciousness. So that is why it's so pertinent to look at saying, oh, well, if I've been dishonest somewhere in my life, all I have to do is tell the truth. That won't actually necessarily transform your experience unless you can integrate it in a new way through your energy structure, and in a way that will generate harmony in your relationships with others. So that's one of the reasons I'm super excited about this particular transformation and where we're at with the 59, because in 2014, my experience of the transformation of this particular gene key, I had no knowledge of the gene keys or human design. Yet my awareness of this transformation, I was led to call it the awakening of the heart. And the gene key 55 is about a genetic mutation that occurs within the solar plexus. Its programming partner, the 59, is the consciousness that is developed as a result of this genetic mutation. And the next stage higher from that solar plexus consciousness exists within the heart space. So that's really what we're looking at here, is a transition of human consciousness from a sort of a 3D way of looking at the world that is based on survival, competition, and individuality, and can be transformed into a new consciousness of a true loving union that takes place through compassion and caring. So, I mean, this is honestly not only my favorite, I saw, Bella, I think I saw you made a post the other day about, or somebody did on one of the on one of the things, what's your favorite gene key? And I have to say, this is my favorite gene key, the 59. It just, like, to me, it holds everything about the current stage of human consciousness and what is required for us to move into a new level of awareness.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, what are your thoughts? I was forming a question, but I think that'll form over whatever it is you're about to say.
I don't know. I felt the moment of like intimacy kind of without words, you know, kind of two consciousness, like kind of deciding where to go next. Um, yeah, I feel when I hear you speak, I think back to like the first time when you and we just met on the phone and you were doing one of your transmissions. And then we shared with each other what we had experienced. And for me, that was an experience of intimacy, like deep intimacy. And I feel like that's where we can be misunderstood. We can have misunderstandings of like what intimacy truly is. And if we listen to Richard, especially the last audio that he did on the 59, he's trying to explain what this intimacy is, which is like the new glue in a way in how we are going to function together. And even after the human being, the rave that comes in, it's completely living on that glue of that interconnectedness and that intimacy. I guess that being in the Virgo energy right now, for me, it's not about going beyond the body without including the body. I believe that it's so important to include the body. I have felt even this week a bit of that disconnectedness, in the sense that it seems to be everything is interrelated in life. And I can see how I get so immersed into one thing and I deal with that. And then I come out and I feel a little bit lost. And then I go into another relationship or another situation. And I feel like the interconnectedness of life is to be able to also flow seamlessly in and out of these different places. And when we are really anchored in our body, as we go in and out of situations and in relationships, that's where we always find that core stability. And that's also where Richard Rudd says, you know, when you look at your activation sequence, you have your life's work, you have your evolution on one side, and then on the other side, you have the radiance and the purpose. And you want to break through that veil, because that veil is coming into the body. The radiance and the purpose is unconscious sun and earth. And not until you break through and see beyond the veil is when you can actually relax into your body, relax into this existence. So I don't believe that we as humans, because we are not raves yet, I don't believe that we as humans are ready to not be anchored in our body. I even think that there is a bit of a danger to fly away too much in that mind, personality, spirit that we find in the conscious sun and earth. So Virgo says the body is an amazing place of transmutation. The body is an amazing place to be. The body is magical, because if we can do the work in the deepest of the cellular core, which is Venus being in the 48 right now, which is about the depth of the body, the feminine, the form. That's when the transformation happens from the densest, that's where it's going to have waves in all the more subtle bodies. So for me, that is what I really trust. If we bypass the physical body, you know, then I start to feel like there are so many possibilities of realities in the more subtle bodies. But if we start from the most tangible, the most physical, that's where we actually can have some kind of impact, is what I feel, in a good way, not as a control, but just as being really embodied through the transmutation of what our process of evolution is.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful perspective to bring into this, because when we consider the shadow of dishonesty from our conditioned reactive space, our conditioned responsive space, what we see is a connection between behavior and punishment, right? What happens when you're dishonest, when you're a little kid? Well, you're punished most of the time. Some children are so good at it that they learn that dishonesty helps them to navigate some of the more difficult aspects of the relationships that they have in their lives. And therefore, dishonesty takes a very deep hold within as a behavior. But this shadow is not about behavior. This shadow is about the body and what is held within the body through our genes. Where is this dishonesty coming from? It's actually a dishonesty that we have with our own body, meaning not an intentional or conscious behavioral choice to ignore what's going on with our body, but simply an inability to be fully aware with our conscious mind or perceptive abilities of the experience and the energy that is being stored within the body. Many people are opening up to the possibility that different practices like massage and somatic therapy and all of these body-centered response practices have to transmute experiences of trauma that are deeply held by the nervous system, that are held by the muscles and the fascia and the tendons in our bodies. And when we are not able to be honest about what is present inside the body with us completely, we're actually sending out vibrations that are attracting experiences to bring our awareness to that reality that is going on within us. And so we attract romantic partners, we attract business partners, we attract friends and colleagues who are going to needle us in those places where we are currently dishonest in our body. And oftentimes in response, because we don't have awareness of what's going on in the physical body, we project that frequency more deeply onto the person who's bringing it to our awareness by saying, oh, that person is being mean to me, or judging their behavior in some way, and just like essentially separating ourselves from the interactive union that is occurring between us. And when we are able to fully get down to the bottom of all of that energetic reality that's been stored in our genes and can be fully honest about the traumatic experiences that we may not even have experienced in our lives. We may be carrying trauma of poverty, trauma of abuse, trauma of betrayal, trauma of all of these of rage, all of these various things that we could have inside our bodies and not even have a reason for it to be there from our perceptive ability. Once we get in there and get honest about what is present in the body, then we can begin to transform, and our relationships can take on a completely different purpose. And like what you're saying, Bella, I believe that's what Richard Rudd is describing in that particular audio, is that the purpose of those relationships is to expand the intimacy of that connection between individuals and allow that to reverberate out into the world, not through some, maybe conscious intention, but simply by the presence of that interactive beingness. And when we transform our awareness of intimacy to that level of sharing that deep inner truth, whether we're still processing unconscious, subconscious, or consciously experienced trauma, then our own relationship to those low vibrating patterns is going to be completely different. And it opens up new possibilities for relationships to serve evolution at the deepest levels, rather than to be obstructions to our fulfillment of our desires. It goes completely in a different direction, and somehow magically ends up by generating this incredible field of fulfillment for us that may cause us to realize, wow, our desires were really leading us in directions that weren't really fulfilling. I mean, it's really a magical process. So, Bella, I wanted to mention in those you brought up the friction between the me and the we in terms of the transits that are going on. And when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, like here are the planets supporting this transmutation of the energy that we experience in relationship. You know, in Richard Rudd's description of the shadow of dishonesty, it's really about sex on a certain level, and how that physical drive happens based on our fear of the other. I mean, this concept is kind of mind-blowing if you start thinking about, well, why are you sexually attracted to somebody else? Well, because they've got something in their aura that you're afraid of. and it's coming to you in a package, a physical package, a physical experience of aesthetics and shared interests and all of the things that go into an attraction between people, that makes that you engaging with that fear sound like a good idea. Really unique. Yeah.
At the end, where Richard takes that from is from Human Design, and it has to do with the genes and the program. So it's the genes are going to survive, and we are going to be, the program of humanity is going to be able to continue when genes that aren't the same are coming together. That's the whole thing. That's when we get really strong, like the generation is moving on. So it's based on that premise that we attract what's different. And of course, what's different is scary. So it is based on fear in that sense. We have this very much in the 6, which is the harmonic gate to the 59. We have it in the 36, which is that fear of penetration. So those tribal gates, those emotional gates, it is very much like that. And I can see that. And I agree that it's mind-blowing in some ways. And what I really feel is that it's not that we are ready to go beyond sex, because at the end of the day, when we speak about human design and we speak about what's coming, yeah, the rave is coming, and it's going to be this kind of interdependent being that can't even live on its own, but it's going to be connecting in aura. So there's no need for physical friction. I believe that we aren't there yet. And I believe that if there's anything about honesty and having things come up to the surface and purify, that's really our sexuality. Because if one of the biggest industries in the world right now is the pornographic industry, then I can say we're not ready to just move beyond it and think that we are done. Like there's a lot of purification, like you are saying, deep in the body, deep in our emotions, deep in our behaviors, deep in those shadow patterns and shadow dynamics that for me, they need to come up into the light, and we need to be honest about. So I believe that there's a lot of opportunity and possibility. And I mean, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, but I'm very much for relating with one partner at a time and to go deep. And it has happened for me in times where I haven't been relating to anybody, that I have a Scorpio moon and I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart, that the only way for me to know and discern another person has been to go so intimate as into sexuality with that person. Actually, for the sake, in a way, for that curiosity, for that wanting to know the depth of that, something I hadn't been able to discern in any other way through friendship or knowing somebody for a long time. Because in that nakedness, in that intimacy, there's nothing to hide. Like it's very hard to hide something, because there is so much more than just the words that speak. There is so much more than just how we see the body that speak. It's like you're saying, it's two auras that interact, and by looking at that third being that's creating, that third entity is creating, then you understand the other and you understand yourself, and you probably understand what either that attraction or that fear or whatever it is that those souls have come to communicate with each other. So for me, I don't think we're done with sexuality. We wouldn't be humans if we were done with the body and sexuality. It's part of what we need to purify. It's part of the place where we need to dare to go. It's part of our liberation, because the life force and the Kundalini sits in our bodies, in our spines. So it's about being able to be sovereign in our own energy, and then we can also be sovereign in an energy with another. And then we don't need porn to become slaves under something, or to see other people on a screen kind of seemingly being slaves. Like that's an energy that doesn't go together with intimacy. So that's something that wants to be purified through the higher frequencies of this 59 and of the 55. The 55 says either you're a slave or you're free. There's no frequency band. Like there's no three frequencies. It's this or that. And that's what this beautiful pair of the sperm and the egg and the possibility of a third being through the 59 and the 55, that's what they want to come and tell us. That's their message, which for me is super powerful. And it happens with Virgo Pisces, like the most kind of earth into the body, and the most kind of out there in poetry and interpretation with the 55.
Oh man. Yeah, you hit so many aspects of this energy on a collective level as well as our individual level in what you just shared about. And when we look at this particular energy in the shadow of dishonesty, it doesn't, there's so many reasons why pornography exists in our universe, but it's not one of the only expressions of sexuality that completely shows the shadow of dishonesty. One of the other things that, and you're saying right now, yeah, this is one of the biggest industries. And if you've been following the news or any of the sort of undercurrent channels of information that are talking about sex trafficking and the recent discovery of children's bodies buried around these schools, the whole Catholic church scandals around the sexual abuses that have gone on in the past. These are all different. While there's so many factors going on, I'm not trying to distill it down to one reason or something. These are all different manifestations of forms of dishonesty within the body. And it really shows how this 59 in the shadow of dishonesty ends up creating a whole population of people who go through experiences of victimization, because that's the shadow of the 55. They go together. So when we're looking at trying to transform our societies so that children can retain the innocence of their experience, and that innocence can be carried through into adulthood to lead to the expression of an inner essence from within, which is actually carried by the sexual energy that person has within their body, then it's not going to transform itself as long as we continue to look at the answers, the answer of justice to these issues as being the polar opposite of, well, we have to force these people to face the truth, or we have to force these people to take their own power back. Now, maybe the evolution of humanity is going to continue in such a way that some people on an individual level will experience those things. They may be put in places where they are forced to become honest by the pressure, the social pressure of others. Or there may be people who are forced to move through a process that is supposed to empower them to move out of victimhood. But those systems, the systems that we have in place as a collective society, are carrying people through that. That's what our current justice system does. It doesn't necessarily transform people who have been within those relationships of predator prey type roles and victimization or target roles within our society. And so, in order to transform these, the gene keys really provide a true solution, no matter which role that you've been a part of in your experience, or that you're carrying genetically through your body and playing out in some particular way in your life. So this movement into intimacy, the reason that I started off talking about awakening the heart is because if you want to deal with your own trauma and you approach it from a standpoint of forcing yourself to look at the pain, or putting yourself in a position where you're going to forcibly face those who inflicted pain on you in order to bring about some form of punishment or justice to the situation. Unfortunately, it's pretty unlikely that you are going to transcend that vibrational wave of those shadow frequencies. Honesty is only useful in this situation when it comes through the perspective of the heart, which is filled with compassion. One should never be forced to face their trauma. One can only be led and guided to do so by another or themselves with willingness, or another who understands the pathway of and the process of transformation that is required to move through that awareness. So these functions of the collective are going to be massively changing for us. And I agree with you, Bella. I don't think we're moving beyond sex anytime soon. And pointing out these evils of society that are still going on, I think that's a huge evidential expression of that. We still have probably many more generations to move through before we're going to be ready to embrace the Siddhic consciousness of the 59. You know, we've got a lot of work to do just to get into the gift levels of this 55 and 59 programming partners as a collective. Each person is going to have to move through that first movement into inner freedom. Each person is going to have to move through that awareness, that honesty with compassion about, which is really an intimacy with oneself about what is present. When we create that intimacy with oneself and fully embrace all of it, then we can have a relationship that's based on friendship, that's based on a business partnership, that's based on a romantic partnership. All of those levels can be filled with intimacy. And the transformation of our relationships in our life can take on a completely new character to our experience. I mean, maybe it's just me because I have this, I have this gate and I have the whole channel with the 6 and everything. I don't know. It just, when I came into the awareness of this particular transformation that is being suggested by this gene key, it just it feels like this is where it's all coming to a huge point where every person in every relationship has such a massive opportunity. And it begins with our own relationship with ourselves. And of course, the transformation of the world is really the result of that willingness to look at ourselves in a new way. So, Bella, I want to just when you are having that experience, when you're aware of the presence of intimacy in your life, in your relationship, in your own just sort of inward space, when you're kind of communing with yourself, what is it that allows you to keep that presence? Because it's so easy to shut down intimacy, to just, the second that it shows up, the second we have an opportunity to share something that is deeply true inside us, there's so many ways that we can avoid that, to distract ourselves. I mean, we were looking at distraction not very long ago, the shadow of distraction. There are so many ways in our experience that can guide us away. So what is a thought or a practice or something that keeps you in connection with that?
I have constriction and seriousness as my IQ and my EQ, the 46 and the 25. And for me, it comes back to the body and the breath and the heart. So what we have been speaking about already, and what's the basis of all tantric alchemy. And it's taken me many years to even feel and believe that it's worth it to be here in physical form. That's how far away I was from accepting the form. And at that time, I don't know if I would ever have believed that the true homecoming is really in the body. And that's the gate that comes after the 59 is the 40. It's the homecoming. And the homecoming happens in that deep, deep place. The 40 is also the gene key that codes the first seal. So the very deepest core wound of humanity, of fear of being here in physical form. So when you commit to yourself to be intimate and stay in the body, that's the homecoming. And that's also the gate of aloneness, because when you can be in that intimacy with yourself alone, that's when God can speak from the inside of you, instead of you running around and looking for him, her, it on the outside. So that's my experience and the paradox for me, the beautiful paradox that's there.
Yeah. And feeling this wave of collective emotion coming through my body, which is the recognition that the one place on earth that is literally designed and created for the purpose of being at home, our bodies, that experience for so many people can be so very far away. And the releasing of those aspects of our bodies which cause us to feel unwelcome. It's really at the center of, to me, all self-transformational work. That's what we are all here to do. And if you are one of the people who has discovered a place of feeling at home within your body, being able to share that vibration in your world in some way, in allowing others to share in that same feeling of welcoming, of being, of belonging, of being present, of being fully here. To me, there's nothing else that's needed in the world. Every issue and problem that we currently experience would be transformed in the light of that degree of presence. So thank you for sharing that, because that's such a profound awareness that can arise through the contemplation of this particular gene key. And when we look in the context of lunar alchemy, it is the reflection of the moon that is currently, right now, making us aware on some level, subconscious, unconscious, somewhere. We know how at home in our bodies we are. And the light of the moon is just permeating us with this energy that is giving us the opportunity to become aware of how much comfort and ability we have to be at home in our bodies. So, if nothing else, I hope that from this discussion you can take away that truth of the ability to become aware and intimate with how at home you are in your body. Not to try and force yourself to be at home, not to force yourself to be in a space that is filled with painful memories or painful vibrations or just plain physical pain. But to just be aware of how much access we have to being at home within our bodies. From that place, you are in a process of lunar alchemy and are moving forward on your path. And from there, I want to conclude our Facebook session, I know, because we're running out of time here, and move on with our members to do a specific quantum transmission to help our subtle bodies, our energetic bodies, to move into a state of support for that awareness to become fully present within us. Not to force us to be aware of it, but to simply allow ourselves to have the courage to look within, to be one with ourselves and all that we are. All of the pain, all of the pleasure, all of it. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing. And for those of you on Facebook, thanks for joining us. We'll see you another time. Feel free to make a comment that you would like to look into receiving some of these transmissions. Just put it down beneath. If you've been watching towards the end and want to do that, we'll address that with you. If you can comment on there, we'll give you the next stages. All right. So we'll see you next time.